represent the four winds or the four directions right here. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with that concept of the four winds or the four directions, but what it means to a Native person, and not just Native Americans, there's lots of other people who believe in the four directions, the four winds, that everything we say and do has an effect on all of life around us. And so they say that you take caution on how you treat all living things, because it comes back around. Some people call it karma or whatever, but it's really true. We have an effect on all of life around us. The way we treat animals, the way we treat people, and the way we treat the earth. So that's what this represents. This hole right here is called the earth hole, and you being the carrier of your flute, it represents your birth. That's your birth. So that's the earth hole, your birth. This is the sky hole, and it represents your death. So you have from earth to sky, these holes are your life. It's called a travel line, and that's where you are. You are on here, we all are on here on this continuum from earth to sky. We are there somewhere. I'm older than you guys chronologically, but that doesn't mean that I'll enter the sky hole before you will. We don't know that, unless of course you plan it out, but we just don't know. And so we try to focus on our travel line, improving our lives, helping people, being kind, doing all those things. That all is here from earth to sky. That's the way the Indians believe. And then you've got your totem, and whatever that totem means to you, that's your totem. And so the energy, I don't know if you really know what a totem is, how, you probably talk about it a little bit if you do have a totem. But a totem is an animal, or a bird. It can be lots of other things, but you draw strength from that totem animal throughout your whole life. And really, the way you get that most often is you go on what's called a vision quest. And you would meet with the Wakasa Wakan, a holy man with the native people, and as a young person, and he would instruct the people involved in those vision quests and what's going to take place in the next 4 days. And then he takes you out onto the land, and he'll give you a spot about this big, and you don't leave that circle for 3 nights, 4 days, or 2 nights, 3 days, whatever he assigns, or you figure out. And you don't eat, and you don't even drink water a lot of times, and you just sit there, and it gets to be pretty tough. I've done three nights, 4 days before, and man, by the end of the 4th day, it's just like, wow. But I saw a lot of cool things too. And you have interactions with animals, with birds, with lizards, with snakes, with coyotes, or whatever it is around here, and maybe one of those will become that totem animal. And the way you find that out is you go back to the Wakasa Wakan, and you go into a sweat lodge, and you have a ceremony, and then he interprets what took place while he helps you to figure out what took place while you're on that vision quest. And that's how a lot of times totems are given to people, because, like for instance, sitting out in that circle, and if a raven just kept circling overhead all the time, then that's probably something that you're connected with, or is that raven. A story that's true. When I was working Troubled Youth, I had this Navajo boy, and I liked the heck out of that kid. He had a lot of energy, and he was just bopping around everywhere. Well, at the end of this course that we were doing for him and his group, I did a sweat lodge with him. We were building it down in the Escalante area, and he was helping me because he was familiar with the sweat lodge because his grandfather did traditional sweats all the time. So we're building this sweat lodge, and this raven, and we were building it right at the base of a big cottonwood tree down in a canyon. This raven keeps circling around and keeps flying around, and it lands in the tree, and he just kept looking at it and kept looking at it, and it wasn't bothering him, but he kept focused on that raven. Well, he didn't say anything, and we get the sweat lodge done. We start the intro to the sweat lodge. We go in the sweat lodge. That raven comes down and lands on top of the sweat lodge. And it's walking around and it's cawing, you know, it's calling out. And that kid, he starts to cry. And I said, what's up? He said, my grandfather gave me the raven as my totem. And I didn't want anything to do with it at the time because he had kind of moved away from his traditional ways. You know, he got in trouble and he was in the Anglo world and he moved away from those traditional ways of his grandfather. And he said, it's true. It's true. And he's saying all this in the sweat lodge. And that raven is walking around on top of the sweat lodge. And so that raven, I know that kid, if he's still alive, I know that he understands what his totem is, that his grandfather said was his totem. Because the raven, you couldn't get more clearer than that to a native person. The raven was right there, and he talked to him. He was talking to all of us. Anyway, that's how traditionally, the Indian way, that you get a totem, you know. So the totem, and this is a symbol that I put in the flutes that I make. And what it is there's a piece of brass that's inlaid into the flute body, and then there's another piece of wood. And that piece of wood is the base wood right here, cocobolo. And then I put a piece of silver inside of that circle of wood, and it's off center. You can see that if you look at it close enough. What that symbolizes to me is that it's this: from earth to sky, what are we doing in our life and in our world to move our piece of silver closer to center? If we try to live a good life, try to give people back kindness, and we try to help, we try to do what we can do rather than be, you know, always angry and at the world and at people or whatever, hopefully by the time we enter the sky hole, we will have moved our piece of silver closer to center. And that's why I put that in there. That's what it represents. And the way we treat people, if we're willing to help people, there's an African proverb, and it goes something like this: when I have help, I have hope. When I have hope, I have everything. And that's from people who have nothing as far as material things, but they know that if there's somebody that comes into their life and helps them, it gives them hope. And that's kind of what this represents right here. What are you going to do with your life? You're working with troubled youth and you're helping them. Some days it probably doesn't seem like that. That's your job. I understand that. But it can go way beyond that too. You can give more of yourself, and you might get burned for doing what you do. They might not even think of that as anything that's significant at all. Doesn't matter what they think. What matters is what you think. What you're willing to do to try to help people, even if they just kind of flip you out. That's their problem. It's not your problem. You honor your piece of silver. You honor your travel line, regardless of what other people do and how they think about it. That's the hard part to get to come to, you know, in your mind and in your heart, because we kind of like accolades, or we kind of like a little bit of gratuity for what we do for people. With troubled youth, you're probably not going to get a whole lot of that. I didn't, but I got enough. And I realized that it was helping, I thought. And some of them, I've had parents of some of those kids come up to me and say, you saved my daughter's life. You saved her life. No. No, you did. Because it turned her life around, you know, the direction she was going. So you never know. But it doesn't matter. You don't have to know. Just keep doing what you believe in doing, and that's part of this. It's for you, you know, as well as the other people that you help. Okay, four winds, earth, sky, travel line, and a little bit about playing the flute. When you were playing earlier, and that's how everybody starts out, what I suggest to people how they play this flute is take your finger pads and smash them down flat onto the flute body. And I hold the upper notes with my left hand, and my right hand covers the lower three notes on a 6-hole flute. To start with, like a lot of musical instruments, what you do is you start playing a scale, and that's how you practice. So what I'm going to do on this 6-hole flute, I'm going to keep the fourth hole from the bottom covered to start with. So I'm basically playing 3 and 2. And you have to play them in order, in sequence, because you're playing a scale. So this is what it does. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be real easy on the lower note. All right? I don't want to put too much volume, because if I do, the lower note is designed to overblow, so I get a higher octave in it if I overblow it. So I'm just going to be really mellow in my, my volume going in. So it's like this. If I have too much volume, it'll be like this. And it's going to be kind of squeaky. That's too much volume. Reduce your airflow a little bit. And then I'm going to play my scale. And I'm going to start opening from the bottom and work up. And this is what it will be. And then I just work back down. I'm keeping this one closed. Whoops. Whoops again.
Mm-hmm.
Can you edit that?
Yeah.
There it is. And then I start again. I want to get my fingers used to finding the seat, the place, and I want to exercise them. I want to go up and down, up and down, up and down, but keep it in sequence. If I want to play these upper notes and I decide, well, I'll just play them out of sequence of scale, it's going to sound like this. Because it's not in scale. And that's to your benefit later on, because you're going to be able to play those out of that scale to hit half steps, half notes, and full octave higher. But first, just start with your scale. So just up and down. When you come back down to the bottom note, you've got to relax in your diaphragm, in your breathing, and slow it down. Don't put a lot of volume in there because you'll overblow it. All right, a couple of things about playing. And one thing that I do is I try to play with a little vibrato in with my wind, my air. And it's like this. I can just play it straight up like this. But I can also go like this. And listen to the difference. Here's straight up, or and I get that, I'm kind of, you know, pushing that note a little bit, and I'm getting it to move and to vibrate a little bit. So I do both. I might go, that's straight up. But when I end, and you can see my chest, and I'm going like that, okay? And then I'll fade, I'll let it fade to just straight up, no vibrato. And I'm just slowing my breathing down to where it just fades, you know, just fades. Okay, that's vibrato. The other thing, there's a thing called double tonguing, and that's, and I don't do these effects very often, or I mean all the time. I do them just so it tweaks people when they hear it just a little bit. So I might go, whoops. And I'm one time, you know, or I'm coming down. And the other thing is a trill, and it's like making a snake sound, and that's. It's really cool when you're playing outside and you've got birds around, because when they hear that trill, oftentimes, especially in the spring, they'll come in to see who's invading their territory. They really will. So it's, I can do something like that, and it's like birds are just whoop, 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 whoop. And it's pretty cool because, you know, I can talk to coyotes too at night. And they're just gonna say, hey, look, that sounds like a sick dog, but I gotta go find out who it is. And I brought coyotes real close to camp so many times, and you know, I'm just make it up, you know. Okay, so the trill, double tonguing, and vibrato. The other thing that I do a lot is a couple of things. I bark, what the Indians call a bark, and what it is, it's usually at the end of a run of your notes. And if you do it quick and you just pull a couple of notes up like that are going to be out of scale. And that's how I'll end a note, is with a bark. And the other thing is I'll bend notes, just like on a guitar. So it's, and I'm taking my finger and I'm sliding it on and off. You know, I can do it both ways. Or circular, whatever. And how I use that is like, man, I don't think you know, since that crack, it's changed a little bit. And anyway, I'll have to work on this one. And a bark. One time, I have a friend, and he used to work for Red Cliffs. He actually plays really well, but sometimes he drives me nuts. He just plays Indian music, and he plays it okay, but he's always doing, he's just doing it so much that it doesn't have any novelty to it at all. It doesn't, you know, like, what was that sound? Because he does it all the time. And I'm thinking, tone it down a little bit. But it's his music, it's not mine. You don't have to try to play Indian music, play whatever. You know, Indians believe that you just pick up the flute, go sit somewhere and start playing it, and a song will come. You know, it comes. And that's the way it's really cool. Like, you know, I'll just play stuff, and it's not, you can go online and you can get some pretty cool, you can get great music for these things, and this is what it's going to look like. Okay, here's Amazing Grace, and it's going to show you all your notes and what is opened and what is closed, and you can pull it off like this. And when you pull it off, you want to, if you have a 5/0 flute, you'll pull it off for a 5/0 flute, and this is a 6/0 flute. So this music here is for a Native American flute, sheet music, Amazing Grace, and that's really cool. You can learn how to play just from, that's what it's going to look like, and it's really good. So anyway, okay, care and feeding. I'm going to oil your flute another 2 or 3 times, and then you're going to take it and you'll go out to the field if you're going to take it in the field, or wherever, if you keep it at home, and it's going to look dried out over time. This flute didn't actually work as a flute, so I use it for demonstration. Well, if you look at it in the light, you can see a sheen to it, and what that is a patina that's built up over 10 years of people handling it with oil and wax on their hands, and that's kind of how you want your flute to get, but it takes time to get it there. It just takes time. And you can put any kind of oil on it, but that's just mineral oil with aromatic oil, or, you know, any kind that has cedar oil in it, oil of cedar, I think it's called. You could put, you know, lavender, you can do whatever you want. put a little bit in some mineral oil and rub it on there, and you'll get a little bit of a scent. Put sage, put lemon, put whatever, you know, it doesn't matter. And you don't even have to do that. You can use olive oil too, but I wouldn't do it on the Padauk flute because olive oil tends to make things kind of go yellow or darker, and on the Padauk it'll make it this brownish, reddish brown. On the others it won't hurt it one way or the other. So you can use, you know, you can almost use any oil. So if you take it into the field and take it into the field, if it cracks like you saw this one, you know, I mean this morning, well, we put super glue in there, and I've glued that back together again probably 4 times now. And I carry this flute with me all the time. I play it before sweat lodges, and it's outside, it's cold, it's hot, or whatever. But you have to, this is wood, and it's going to change a little bit. Not metal, not ceramic, not plastic that doesn't move so much. You're going to have a little bit of movement in wood because it's a natural thing that has pores and grain and all of that. So once I get it tuned, it might go out of tune for you a little bit. Once you learn how to play it so you can actually see or hear if it's in or out of tune. But care for it like this. If you've been playing the flute, if it's really cold outside, you're not going to be able to play it for much longer than a half an hour, and then it's not going to sound very well because you have so much condensation building up in here and underneath here, you're going to have to clear it. And so what I do is hang on to it, turn it upside down, and hold on tight, and I just go like this. And spit's going to come out this end right here, okay? The other thing that I can do is I can overblow it really hard, and I go like this. I'm just going to blow into it, and you'll see a little bit of moisture coming right out here onto the brass piece. And then you can play again. But if it's cold out and you're carrying it into the field, get a case or make a case out of fleece. You don't want to put leather right next to the flute body because leather will act like a chamois and it'll suck all of the oil out of your flute. But you could have fleece and make a case for it, something real simple like that one, and then put leather on the outside, whatever, that's okay. But I'd suggest that you come up with some system to carry this and to pad it. And you've been playing outside, it's cold, take this flute into your sleeping bag and sleep with it. Because if you don't, if you set it right outside of your sleeping bag and it's freezing, I'll pretty much guarantee you're going to crack your flute. And where it's going to crack is right back here, kind of like right where this one did, and it's going to follow a grain usually. So it would start here, and it would go right along here, and your flute's cracked. That doesn't mean that your flute is wrecked. It's not. Just stick some super glue in it, clamp it, and let it dry. Yellow glue works, carpenter's glue works really well too. Epoxy will work, and you're back in business. I've had one that was just, it was cracked in 5 different places because someone sat on it. And I'm thinking, man, that was a nice flute. I just put glue in it, clamped it, sanded it, and it was good as good. Just had some cracks in it, you know. So, but if you clamp it well enough, people aren't even going to see it too much, you know, especially in a darker wood. And anyway, and don't put it in on your dash in the hot sun. I can pretty well guarantee your flute's going to crack if that's the way you take care of it. So protect it is what I'm saying.